those now. So again, thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. I'm a professor of law based at Northumbria University. And one of my other hats is as chair of the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner and West Midlands Police Data Ethics Committee. So today I'd like to talk to you about a research project that we've conducted to study the impact of that committee, and in particular how it goes about carrying out that ethical review, and whether the actions and advice of the committee does in fact support responsible AI in policing. So this study has only just been carried out. It was carried out between February and the end of July this year. So results are hot off the press. It was a scoping study kindly funded by the BRAID programme, that stands for Bridging Responsible AI Divides, and that is part of itself funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. So we're very grateful to them for supporting and funding this study. The researchers who carried out the work are based at Northumbria University, also at Northampton University, Glasgow University and Aberdeen University. So very much a collaborative and multidisciplinary study looking at legal aspects and technical aspects in particular. So I'll start off by telling you a little bit about the committee itself, what it does, how long it's been going, and why we wanted to undertake this assessment, this review of its activities. And then I'll go through the research questions that we looked at and some of the findings and recommendations that we've come to. We're hoping that the study will not only help the West Midlands force and the PCC in that region to perhaps put in place improvements to the process of the committee, but also inform national policy around the sort of independent advice that might support and improve AI and advanced data analytics in policing, and potentially also inform the academic considerations of these areas as well. There's lots of debates about whether this type of undertaking can actually make a difference to technological robustment to human rights, to ethical considerations. So we also want to inform that's more academic and philosophical debate about these areas as well. So this is the Ethics Committee. This is a copy of our web page, which is based on the PCC's website. The committee has been established since early 2019. And it was set up in parallel to the establishment of an internal data analytics lab within West Midlands Police. So that's a functionality, an internal functionality within the police force itself, staffed by expert data scientists. And what they do is do data analytics projects, create tools and models for the police force themselves in order to use the data that the force has got. So the committee committee was set up in parallel to that functionality because there was a recognition, which I think was very forward thinking, of both the PCC and the force, that advanced data analytics itself can create issues, potential risks and harms, not only benefits. And so independent advice running parallel to the sort of projects that the Force and the Data Analytics Lab are undertaking, could help ensure that those types of risks and harms were mitigated. So the committee itself is chaired by myself. The deputy chair is Dr. Jamie Grace from Sheffield Hallam University, and we have a number of members on that committee with different backgrounds and expertise, some from academia, industry, public sector expertise, and some from policing as well. And in terms of areas of disciplines and expertise, we have lawyers, ethicists, people who have expertise with of crime, data scientists, experts in human rights, and experts in policing as well. So it's a reasonably diverse set of people. I think it's fair to say that although we have attempted to represent the local West Midlands region in the membership, we've only been partially successful in that. And where we do have a gap, I think, is in people who represent some of the communities within the West Midlands region, and particular perhaps those representing vulnerable groups or underrepresented groups. And that has been an aspect of this research that we've looked at, and I'll come on to that. So the Ethics Committee has a system of work. It meets at least on a quarterly basis to look at projects and models and proposals that in particular, the Data Analytics Lab is working on. Not only the lab, but some other parts of the Force also bring projects that have a data or a technology focus. And we have looked at more national projects as well, and projects supported by the Home Office. And the committee is advisory only. We provide advice not only from an ethical point of view, but really generally from a the point of view of all the different disciplines represented on the committee. And we work subject to a terms of reference, which lays out certain principles under which we should consider projects being put forward, including whether the use of the data, the model, has clear benefits for users and serves the public good, and whether there are any issues of discrimination or disproportionality that would need to be considered. The committee has appeared in various national reports that have been published over recent years around the use of data and AI and technology in criminal justice in particular. One that did look at the impact of the committee was the House of Lords Justice and Home Affairs Committee report in 2002 that looked at the use of new technologies in the justice system. And that report highlighted that the West Midlands Committee has got this specific focus on technological solutions, and recommended that the government look at models, national models, and also, local and regional models that can give that specific focus to technological solutions. Many police forces have ethics committees, but they tend to be quite generalist. The difference with the West Midlands model is it was specifically set up to look at data analytics, and therefore to have the membership and the structure needed to be able to focus on the issues that might arise in looking at data in that particular context. I think it's also important to point out that we're not looking at ethics in a very general or unspecific way. The work of the committee is very practical because we are dealing with very practical models and proposals that are going to be used for specific policing purposes. And therefore, how the proposed data analytics will be deployed in practice is really essential to evaluating its potential impact, both in terms of what it's going to do from a positive point of view and also what potential risks there might be. And I think this was something perhaps that when the committee first got going was seen as a bit strange to perhaps some of the police personnel that were interacting with the committee. Why are committee members asking about police operations and how this model is going to be used in practice? What interventions from the police might result. Why is the committee not just focusing on the technicalities of the model, the statistical issues, for example? And that's because of this point that you can only really analyze its benefit and harm if you know how it's going to be used in practice and how the outputs might inform decision making and interventions. And so that's an issue and a subject that the committee members always return to. How is this model going to be used? How is it going to be used by real police officers and real circumstances? So that's a bit of background about the committee and its work. So I'll move on now to tell you a bit about the research and the research questions that we focused on, and then the research methods briefly, and then some of the findings that we think are quite interesting. So these are our research questions. Apologies for there's going to be a bit of text on the slides. We had 6 main research questions. The first one was about influence and technology. What influence has the committee had on the design and the operating of policing AI projects in West Midlands Police? So that's the sort of more technical side, design side. The second question was about what sort of human rights issues were in fact identified by the committee, and were these dealt with in the design of the tool? Were changes made as a result of identifying those human rights issues? Thirdly, how were the interests of vulnerable groups incorporated within the whole process, if at all? Fourthly, what challenges did committee members and police representatives think there were in the committee review process? Fifthly, are there other frameworks that could help make the process of ethical review more robust? And finally, what challenges emerged from the research itself that would need to be addressed in perhaps larger or future research projects, particularly as we're dealing with quite a sensitive context here. So in terms of our research methods, it was very much a mixed methods approach. We did a lot of analysis of the minutes that are published by the committee, and those are all publicly available on the PCC's website. So there's quite a lot that can be gleaned from both the papers that were put forward to the committee and the fairly comprehensive minutes that are published from the meetings, which do not only talk about recommendations, but also give a summary of the debate and questions in the meeting. So we did an analysis of the minutes and also tried to determine what were the different projects that had gone forward to the committee and how had they moved through the review process as those projects had developed. Also, there were a number of interviews undertaken with members, so over, I think, about 26 interviews conducted over the 6 months, and they were conducted with members of the committee, so committee members themselves, people from the data analytics lab and the police, and also importantly community representatives, so from groups that represented interests such as equality, such as race equality, disability, mental health, youth justice. So there was a mixture of interviews to get a number of different perspectives. And we also did a small number of technology observations of 2 tools where we could see the interface that had been built to allow the police user to use the tool. And that was very helpful in giving us a sense of what sort of information the police user might see, what sort of uncertainties and statistical issues they might be able to pick up on, whether they could see the underlying data and that type of thing. So in terms of the analysis, a thematic analysis was really important to all that data collection, and from that we were able to pull out a number of really important themes that came out in particular of the interviews and perhaps to a lesser extent of the minutes, and that thematic analysis very much informed the research conclusions and the recommendations going forward. So I'll move on to those now, and I'll talk through the findings and some of the recommendations by research question that I've already been through. So in terms of the research objective 1, which arguably is one of the most important ones, what sort of influence did the committee's advice have on the development of data analytics and technology projects within the police? Fundamentally, the research found that the committee's advice did influence the design and operationalization, I can never say that word, of AI projects in policing, and also contributed to transparency and good practice in the design of AI projects. I think it's really important to point out that, I don't know whether uniquely, but certainly in a minority, West Midlands is one of those police forces that puts all of its papers, unless there are very sensitive issues, which we don't tend to come across, about its data lab work and the papers put forward to the committee on the website. So there is a high level of commitment to transparency, and therefore allowing people to see what sort of debates and changes have been made to projects as a result of the advice of the committee. It was also clear that I think perhaps because the committee has been running for 5 years now, that it has influenced the design of projects in more subtle ways, because the lab now anticipates the sort of concerns that the committee might have, and so has thought about those in advance. And senior police officers will also think about and speak about the insights that they've had from participating in that committee process. And that influence may extend beyond West Midlands Police if those police officers go to different roles or perhaps take on national portfolio roles. However, I think it's also the case that influence is not immediately clear from a reading of the minutes, and it's not always apparent from the discussions within the committee whether or not changes have been made and what that influence has been. So certainly from a record keeping point of view and from the point of view of improving trust and public debate, there should be more focus on trying to document how changes are being made, what the influence has been. In terms of human rights issues, as you might expect from the background of a number of people on the committee, and also because the terms of reference require the committee to be rights focused and to focus on issues of human rights, potential harms, etc. There is that strong rights focus in the committee's advice. There was engagement with the committee by data analytics and police staff was said to have enhanced their understanding of human rights approaches and issues, but the research found that it may be that the committee is overly focused on certain human rights, particularly those relating to privacy, data protection, protection from discriminations. And a number of interviewees, including those from community groups, spoke of the need to broaden that approach to take into account other rights. For example, Article 6, right to a fair trial, and really importantly, from a police point of view, to give more consideration to the state's positive obligations under Articles 2, right to life, and Article 3, prohibition against torture, which require the police to take certain positive steps for public safety point of view, and that's the incentive behind a number of data analytics and AI tools, that these tools will support those positive obligations. So the view from many was that the approach to human rights needed to take that broader approach. Also, from an ethics committee member point of view, there was a concern that there was often a lack of information to allow them to make any sort of human rights assessment, because it was not always apparent how the tools were going to be put into practice, what actions and interventions might result from the deployment of the outputs. And as a quote here from one member saying, "I want to know what the worst case scenarios are of either the data science being flawed, but also in relation to the outcomes." And I think that is that aspect that sometimes causes a bit of tension between the police representatives and the committee representatives, because perhaps police representatives might see that being overly interfering in the operational independence of the police, whereas committee members really think it's essential to know how things are being deployed and what's going to happen. So I think what we find is that if you have operational police officers there at the meeting, as well as the data scientists, you can talk about how the police are going to work with this data output, what other information might be used, what outcomes might occur, it can really help to enhance the debate and avoid any sort of misunderstandings in that sort of discussion. From a record keeping point of view as well, there is an issue with often the debate occurring without explicitly mentioning what human rights people are concerned about, and that's often not apparent also from the minutes, and that's we thought was an important thing to try and address in the future. And also, again, really important issue about when projects should come back to the committee for further advice, particularly after if they've been out in the real world for a while. And that seemed to be unclear from the committee's remit how those committees how those projects should return, how lessons are going to be learned from evaluating models and data analytics tools have been out in the wild for a while, and that from more a broader and sort of national basis is really important to address. In terms of our third objective, which was around vulnerable groups, we found that in fact, most of these, or practically all of these representatives of community groups had no knowledge or very minimal knowledge of the existence of the committee and what it did, which I think is not surprising, because the transparency around the committee, although positive, is only really limited to the minutes on the website. So many representatives were unsure of the role of the committee, what it might do in the policing worlds. They were quite familiar with things like scrutiny panels, but not familiar at all with what this committee was doing and why it might benefit the wider society. And also, in terms of community representatives being prepared to join the committee, many were quite concerned that they wouldn't have the technical expertise or knowledge to contribute, and so it was felt really important that it was clear that their value would be in their, their personal experiences, their representing of particular groups, and that they would need to be reassured that a lack of technical knowledge would not restrict their ability to engage in discussions, and actually they would have huge value acting as community advocates as well as experts in their own right on the committee. And that's something I think will be really useful as we try and move forward and try and engage more representatives from the community to sit on the committee, which we really need to do. A few quotes from these community representatives. The first person there is concerned that on many occasions people are asked to go on these sort of panels to be advisors for public sector bodies, and this is being asked to be done on a freebie basis, which can obviously be really detrimental for some. They said they're expecting people to come forward, volunteer to do work, and it's really a cost-saving exercise because previously they used to employ people to do this. So I suppose it's really important that that is not what we do on this body. Some people were often a little concerned that it could be a situation where people want to have meetings but no change happens because they don't want change to happen, and also that they need to be allowed to be heard because it could quite easily be a tokenistic group of community members who would sit down and watch proceedings unfold. So those were experiences that these interviews had before, and so it's really important that we acknowledge that and try and mitigate and avoid those types of things happening. So there are a number of challenges highlighted in terms of the um ethical review, communication processes. How do we know that recommendations have been followed? And also from the data analytics lab's point of view, it was often the case that maybe they didn't have enough of an explanation of the rationale for the recommendations from the committee members. And that was something that needed to be addressed. There was no clear protocol for the return of live projects, as I mentioned before. Um, and also there was often this tension between, again, as I mentioned, from those in the police who are concerned with operational priorities and those on the committee who actually want to know how things are going to happen, what's going to happen as a result of using this data analytics. That was quite a clear tension between different perspectives there that does need to be acknowledged, but can, I think, be addressed by that intervention of operational senior officers in particular. So in terms of conclusions, there are a number of conclusions in the report that will be available in early September. We're still just tweaking the content at the moment, but it will be published very shortly, and that will be available on the Braid website as well as on the Northumbria University website. So our conclusions include that this type of consultation and advice from independent voices can certainly contribute to the robustness of AI and data analytics in policing, but it must be incorporated fully into the implementation process. It can't be just some sort of add-on or one-off add-on or tick box exercise. And considerable time and effort are required to construct and embed such an advisory process. I mean, we've been going for 5 years. We've still not got it right, as we can see from this research. But it can, if that time and effort is put in, start to build a positive culture and knowledge within the police, where they understand the sort of issues likely to be raised, so they can build those first into the planning and the implementation process. It's also really important that attention is given to police responsibilities as well as to risks. And that requires an openness to learn from everyone in the committee process. So the members themselves of the committee, and also the police and the data scientists. But this process can't be assumed to improve or create trust in policing per se, especially from community representatives. For that to happen, there needs to be a lot of effort put into incorporating the voices of the community and ensuring that the work of the panel is known about, and also that it's clear that its input is respected, and it's not just some sort of one-off exercise that will be put in a drawer. So I think I'll stop there and